Listen up, Democrats.
You are fake news.
Save all democracy from friendly and democracy. For integrity and embrace all diversity. Listen up, Democrats.
Hello, welcome to Progressive Oregon, a weekly engagement broadcast on progressive issues in Oregon. My name is Larry Taylor, and I'm here today with my co-host, Betsy Cunningham. If you would like to ask questions during the show, you can go to the chat window in YouTube and type in the questions. Betsy will relay them to me, and we will do our best to answer them. We have three things that we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about the Bernie Sanders rally in Tacoma. Then we're going to talk about timber unity and the rise of the right in Oregon. And then we will spend a little bit of time on the 2020 Q1 State Central Committee meeting, which is coming up on March 15th. So starting out with the Tacoma rallies, Bernie Sanders flew in to Tacoma on March 17th. They they had a volunteer training on the day before, which I went up for, and then the event was on the 17th. It was absolutely amazing. 17,000 people showed up for the Bernie rally. They said it was the largest group of volunteers that had ever shown up for a Bernie rally, and all the ones that they do across the country. And the Tacoma Dome was filled, and it has a alleged capacity of 23,000, but they said 17,000 were in attendance. So I guess the extra capacity must come when they put all the seats on the floor. What was astonishing was what showed up in the mainstream news. I was looking for some mention of it in the things that I read, and the only thing I saw on what happened on the 17th was that Elizabeth Warren held a gathering at a grocery store, and they completely ignored the event that happened in Tacoma. And so that's why I was so intent on creating the video that we're showing today, because it conveys to you really what is going on the ground, and it gives us a little bit of insight into why there's this disconnect between what is going on the ground and what we are seeing as activists working for Bernie Sanders to be elected president and what the mainstream media is reporting. I think they are just so limited in their travel budgets and their ability to get out, and that they actually don't get to experience what is actually going on the ground. So Oz, is there anything you'd like to say before we plunge into the video?
The Tacoma Dome holds up to 23,000 people, and I believe, just by what I've heard from people who were there, it was certainly far above 17,000. So I think Amber, who is our Progressive Washington showrunner, said it was closer to 20,000, 19.5 maybe. And the energy was fantastic there. It just blew the top off the building, and you survived, so it was a lot of fun. So that's a good thing. So,
and one of the shots that you'll see in the video that we're going to show is a sort of a 360 scan of the bleachers. Quite a bit of the way through the rally, so there were still people coming in way past 7 o'clock that evening. But yeah, you can see that there are very few seats left up in the higher reaches, even the upper balconies. So it's a 10-minute video. I hope you enjoy it. It was an endurance trek to be able to attend it, but it was well worth it. So why don't we go ahead and cue up the video, and then we'll talk a little bit more about it when it's over.
is Brian T. Scott, Cheddar Poyala Poch. All quick loot salale, DC
from Washington State's 7th Congressional District, Pramila Jayapal.
My name is Pramila Jayapal, and I represent Washington's 7th Congressional District. And I am so proud to be the Washington State Chair for Bernie 2020. Now, I've been an organizer for 3 decades, and many of you know that I worked on immigrant rights. I started what is now the largest immigrant advocacy organization in Washington State, One America.
introducing you to the next First Lady of the United States.
Welcome, Tacoma. It's great to be here with you.
Let me, again, this is just an unbelievable turnout. Let me thank all those who have spoken: David Bean, Deborah Parker, Sacred Family Canoe Group, Shama Savant, Teresa Mosqueda, Jamie Margolin. Let me thank Tim Robbins for being here tonight. And let me thank someone all of you should be extremely proud of, one of the outstanding members of the United States Congress, your Congresswoman, Pramila Jayapal. We are here tonight to focus on two enormously consequential issues. First, together, we are going to defeat the most dangerous president in the modern history of this country. Donald Trump is a pathological liar. And no matter what your political point of view may be, we cannot have a liar, we cannot have a president who is running a corrupt administration. We cannot have a president who is undermining American democracy and our Constitution. We cannot continue having a president who is a racist, a sexist, a homophobe, a xenophobe, and a religious bigot. Those are his finest qualities. But it's not just his character, or more likely his lack of character. It is that he is a fraud. Yeah. And by the time this campaign is over, the American people will understand he is a sellout to the working families of this country that he promised to defend. During his
So, that was just to give you a flavor of what was going on the 17th. The three takeaways that I thought of the day after the event when I was driving home. The crowd was amazingly young. 85% of the attendees were under 40. And if you look back at the video, you can see that there's very, very few people that are over the age of 40. And that is the inverse of what you usually see at political events. Usually it's the older crowd and we never see the younger crowd. So that was really cool to see. And so I suspect that there will be many people voting for the first time. One of the indicators of the popularity of Bernie was the swag. So you saw in the video that people waving the signs during the cheering moments. After the rally, I was looking for a sign to take away, and I had to scour the bleachers to find one because everyone took everything home. There was virtually nothing to clean up after the rally was over because it was all taken away with them. And they were very well made, and so they'll end up being used between now and November. The other thing that was really surprising was Bernie was after the clip of him. He was doing his litany of we are making them nervous, and he would say things like, we're making Wall Street very nervous, we're making the insurance companies very nervous. And one of the last ones he mentioned was the Democratic Party. We're making the Democratic Party very nervous. The cheering over that was twice as loud as it was for any of the other things that he mentioned, which is an indicator of how deeply unpopular the Democratic Party is. And the recent comments by the superdelegates that they think they're going to somehow deny Sanders the rally or the nomination if he shows up in Wisconsin with a majority just increases everyone's hatred of that that group of people. And so, you know, with any luck, we will elect Bernie Sanders as our president, and he will make some structural changes to the Democratic National Committee to finally instill some ethics and accountability to them. Is there anything you'd like to say in closing about the rally?
We were so energized up here. I didn't get to go because I'm grounded, but it was a very positive thing for everybody who got to see Kashama Sawant and Jamie Margolin. Now, I believe she's with, is she with 0 Hour, Jamie Margolin? One of her messages was for everybody, even if they're not a delegate, to go to Milwaukee to show the party hierarchy that we're serious about this and they better not play the super delegate card. What did you think of? She's a young gal from Cuba, and she's all about the. That's her origins, I believe. Did you catch all that, Larry?
Yes, I'm sorry I didn't film her or videotape her. She's an 18-year-old, and she was part of a group that sued. I don't know, it was the state of Washington or the federal government or something, and she has her name on a lawsuit. And she is extremely powerful and articulate and just astonishing. I think back of what I was like when I was 18. She's 180 degrees from what I was back then. She was extremely impressive.
Yeah, she's going to be the face of political leaders to come. After my generation says its fond farewell, I believe with, like you said, 85% of the attendees were under 40. That's what's coming, and I hope that the Democratic Party, if they want to remain a viable party, recognizes that and treats them with the dignity and respect that they've been hyping all these years about having such a big tent and bringing new people in.
Yes, we shall see. You know, they had an opportunity when they were choosing the leadership of the Democratic Party three years ago when they settled on Perez. And I've heard people say since then, well, you know, back then we didn't realize that it would really make any difference. But it turns out that it makes an enormous difference because of all the power that the rules of the Democratic National Committee give to the chair. Like, he completely selects all of the membership of the different committees, such as the Rules Committee. There is no mandate for regional representation or anything. And so, you know, those are some enhancements that I hope we can make to the structure of the Democratic Party, so it's more representative of the people. And when you start thinking about even how the voting goes, I mean, for the Iowa caucuses to have a vote calculation system where you do not get a majority, when you have the majority of votes, you do not get a majority of the delegates. I mean, they seem to have avoided blame for that, but all of the rules for all of the state's parties were approved by the Rules Committee, the Democratic National Committee. And so they're as responsible for the screw ups in Iowa as anybody.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Larry.
Anyway, that was what happened in Tacoma. As we get closer to the primary here in Oregon, I'm sure we're going to see at least one appearance, if not more. Last time he showed up twice at Moda Center, and he did a rally in Salem as well, to the Salem Armory, and so we look forward to seeing him then. The next topic that we're going to talk about is timber unity. This is something that is getting some news, but it's not getting any attention from the Democratic Party, from what I can see in the Portland metro area. They are, it's a group, and I don't exactly know how they're structured. They're probably a 501c4 or something. They're getting a lot of money from corporations, and they're using basically the Trump supporters as their front, and their slogan is that they're for working families, and they're trying to play the oppressed poor man card, trying to force some changes. They supported the legislature in Oregon from when they walked out of both the House and the Senate, grinding the short session to a halt because by them leaving the building, it deprives the legislature of a working majority, and they can't get anything done until at least one or two of them turn up again. They are using the cap and trade bill as their I don't know, foil for ginning up emotions, and we are seeing that out here in Clatsop County. I am finding the cap and trade bill, as well intended as it is, hard to be the hill to die on because it is so watered down. It's like, why expend energy on something that has been so modified and compromised that it doesn't really do anything? And it could be argued, well, it's a first step, but often these first steps end up being the only step. And I don't know what to do about it. They showed up at the county commissioner meeting here in Clatsop County last week, and they had a couple of people testify against cap and trade, and they wanted the county commissioners to sign on to a resolution opposing cap and trade. They had already received signatures of 27 out of the 36 counties in Oregon, which is a huge effort. So you can see that this is more than just a grassroots, which is what is the front of it is. It's really well organized, and they have a lot of money that they're using for this organization. One of our county commissioners is being challenged by a candidate that is supported by Timber Unity, and she's getting an astonishing amount of money thrown at her. It's going to be interesting to see if the money is going to make the difference. We have not seen anything that looks like a winning campaign yet, but we're still far away from the vote happening. Betsy, you were saying earlier that you're also seeing Timber Unity in Douglas County. How do they manifest themselves down there?
Well, definitely within, folks who support the logging industry, the logging companies and mills, helping to support the effort. But, we are, this county calls itself the timber capital of the world.
Of the world.
Hey, that's how big this little county's ego is, at least population wise. And we are one of the counties, our county commissioners signed on to that resolution. And, the argument is, and some of us are, have these dialogues ongoing on Facebook, is the idea that they believe that they don't have a voice and a vote because the majority wins. And to me, that is just such a crazy argument, and an indication of the lack of civics lessons and understanding of what a representative democracy is. I mean, it's just so bizarre, trying to make people think, they think they have a right to have more of a vote than the people in Portland because we're bigger geographically, not population. The one person, one vote is amazingly ignorant to them, I guess. I just don't get it.
Thank goodness acres don't vote.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't, I've been talking to various people, and we don't know how to address this because it is so pervasive across most of the state, and they're the people that are running the counties that they're protesting against, such as ours, are being caught flat-footed. We're seeing the Timber Unity people show up at planning commission meetings, and it's very reminiscent of what happened in 2009 with Obamacare, where people that you've never seen before would come to town halls and public meetings and just start screaming at the top of their lungs about, the death trials and death to granny and all that weird stuff that wasn't really in the Obamacare bill. And we're seeing the same thing here, where they're quoting data and statistics that just doesn't hold water. and especially in a bill that is watered down. The bill is currently being considered as over 80 pages long, and it's written in legislatese, and it's really hard to tell what it is really doing. And I don't think these are rocket scientists that are comprehending what the bill does and are reporting the truth. They're just getting the sound bites from whoever is masterminding the Timber Unity organization. Anyway, we're trying to organize some workshops on how to talk to the Timber Unity people, especially the ones that are being puppets for the corporations, and reaching out to them and trying to talk about real facts as opposed to alternate facts. And we're not being able to get any traction on getting that done. And I just don't understand why the Democratic Party of Oregon does not recognize this as something that they should be dealing with. If 27 counties have passed resolutions opposing the key piece of legislation, which the Democrats are trying to get to the legislature, that is an indicator that there is a problem. And it's not going to go away by just ignoring it.
Well, and I'm not sure that facts necessarily are going to win. This is a highly emotional issue. And I will put a link on our Facebook page, but last week or so I listened to an article public radio station did with the head, or whatever he's called, kind of the front guy for Timber Unity. And he did not even understand the current bill, and he was just espousing rhetoric. Like, the current bill exempted timber companies logging from the cap, right?
Yeah.
And so he was arguing that he, as a timber owner or a logging truck owner, was going to cost more money. And the reporter says, well, it doesn't apply to you. Right. Then he starts stammering, and it was really, it's amazing that these folks who are even put out as the head of the organization don't even know what was going on. Then he admitted he hadn't read the most recent bill or the one before that. So it's really, I don't know if, facts are going to change their minds.
No, we were actually in Salem when the last logging truck protest happened, and we could hear the logging trucks honking their horns when they were circling the Capitol building, and we were a good 10 blocks away. And so, they're using intimidation and force to make up for the fact that they're a minority in the state, which is, one of the tactics that you do as an activist. But, ignoring facts shouldn't be one of them.
Well, one thing I know that I agree about what you said about the cap and trade. It's not strong enough for me. It shouldn't be strong for anybody who really cares about the environment. But to me, it's more the constitutional crisis that's created by this movement where the minority can stop the legislation. Not just that, but all legislation. I'm a housing and homeless advocate. That's the main, issue-oriented thing that I work on. And there's a really good bill to call as a state of emergency in the state of Oregon over homelessness and infuse a lot of money into helping solve the problem. It's House Bill 4011. Well, that can't go forward, and it actually has bipartisan support. So if this walkout, thing, it holds it hostage. It doesn't just hold cap and trade. It holds everything hostage.
So if anyone has any ideas on what we need to do to organize to counter the Timber Unity movement, you're more than welcome to contact me and pitch your ideas. I do not understand why the leadership in the state does not see this as a problem and thinks they can bluster their way through it. All right, so the third thing that we're going to talk about today is the upcoming Democratic Party of Oregon State Central Committee meeting. I have the agenda in the next slide. What is amazing about this agenda is that the State Central Committee is the primary decision-making body of the Democratic Party of Oregon. And if you look through the agenda, the decisions are pretty much in the links that are blue. There's a half dozen resolutions that they'll be voting on. The first one is on the platform changes. So instead of having a platform convention this year, they decided that the Platform and Resolutions Committee would just review the existing platform and tweak it. We have some good people on the Platform and Resolutions Committee that is watching out for that, and I've not heard of anything that was anything to be concerned about. And so I don't know why we would be spending any kind of time on it at all. And then the other resolutions are what they like to do to make the State Central Committee feel that they're taking action and doing something. There are a bunch of feel-good resolutions which don't go anywhere and don't affect anything, and no one pays attention to, but everyone gets to stand up and speak their piece and get their feel-good moment. It's the most cynical thing. Well, it's one of the more cynical things that the Democratic Party of Oregon does. The one thing that everyone does need to go to the meeting for is the one thing that the Rules Committee is doing. So we have a set of bylaws that really needs some cleanup and corrections, and everything that has been working on has been ambling along, but very little comes out of the committee itself. But the one thing that it did make it through is this thing about relating to the notice of new business, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more. The caucuses, which everyone keeps talking about as being this great democratic movement within the Democratic Party, all the caucuses get 1 minute to report on their activities. You would think that if they were that significant, they would at least get 2 minutes to talk about what they're doing. And then we get a couple of reports, and then we are done. So there's activities happening on the day before. The one thing to remember is that this meeting starts at noon rather than at 1:15. And so if you show up thinking this is the regular time, we're going to be an hour into the meeting before you actually get your credentials. The next slide shows basically what's going to be discussed. So the first item is consideration of amendments to the DPO platform. The platform we passed 2 years ago was a very progressive document, and everyone was quite happy with it. We could have just continued with the existing one. They did do some grammatical corrections and made consistency of language, which is great. But for something that the legislature is only vaguely aware of, if at all, it's a lot of time spent not getting much. The resolutions, all of our feel-good resolutions are listed next. So we have regarding vendor exclusion, primary campaign fairness, and legislator accountability to voters. A resolution regarding the opposition to fascism, always a good thing. Regarding funding for behavioral rehabilitation services for juveniles, yeah, great stuff. And then regarding the establishment of a state bank. What I would ask is what is the time spent on these going to do? Will the leadership of the Democratic Party of Oregon go down to the legislature and have a conversation with Peter Courtney and Tina Kotek about getting a state bank established? I don't know. If they do something with these, great. If they don't do something with these, then shame on them. This is just a waste of people's time. There are people that drive 6 and 7 and 8 hours across the state to attend these meetings, and it is an insult to these people to waste their time on stuff if they're not going to take this seriously. So the one rule, which I hope everyone goes and votes against, it's a special rule, which means it would take a 2/3 vote in order to pass. And this is this is taking more power away from the State Central Committee and giving it to the chair of the Democratic Party, which is not the direction in which we need to go. We actually need to take back some of the power from the leadership that has been given away, so that when we go to the State Central Committees, we actually do something that is significant. So the wording of this is that delegates who wish to introduce new business to the floor by the State Central Committee shall provide notice in writing of the purpose and intent of the motion to be made at least 10 days prior to the meeting at which it will be considered. The DPO chair will electronically distribute a provisional agenda, including all submitted items of new business at least 5 days prior to the meeting, and the State Central Committee may by supermajority I don't know why they use that term. They should just say 2/3 vote, decide to consider an item of new business not properly noticed during any new business section of the State Central Committee meeting. The last one is redundant because that's the rule anyway. You can suspend special rules by 2/3. So the only key parts of this are the first 2 points. And the real net effect of this is that it gives the DPO chair time to basically plot against it if she doesn't like the motion that's being presented, and figure out a way to deep six this. This is what we've seen in the past, and there's no reason to see any different behavior in the future. One of the rights of a member of a committee in the parliamentary authority is that under new business, you can bring up new business, and they've already blocked that from happening. So actually, I don't even know what this does other than bakes into the special rules, so they don't have to deal with new business again. So if you're a State Central Committee meeting or member, please attend the meeting and vote no on this special rule, so we can at least preserve the powers that we currently have in the State Central Committee. The last thing about the Democratic Party, I've been getting a lot of inquiries about who are the superdelegates for the state of Oregon, and so I've listed them on this slide. So the superdelegates, and the reason why they want to know who the superdelegates are is because they want to contact them and talk about their behavior at the convention that's coming up. If you remember, in 2016, Bernie Sanders took 56% of the vote, but only took 3 out of the 13 superdelegates to vote for him. And some of us felt that that was improper, given that the majority of the state was really voting for Bernie Sanders. Fortunately, Bernie took so many of the delegate votes that the superdelegates didn't even change who voted in the majority at the convention. So the majority of the delegates of Oregon voted for Bernie Sanders. Unfortunately, the overwhelming number, even going into the convention, was for Hillary, and so the results didn't actually change. But if you would like to talk to our superdelegates and convince them that they should at least proportion their votes to the outcome of the 2020 primary, we have Governor Brown, Attorney General Ellen Rosenblum, who is a superdelegate by virtue of being chair of the National Association of Attorneys General. Then we have our 2 senators, Senator Merkley and Senator Wyden. And it's my understanding that Merkley has not yet endorsed Bernie Sanders for 2020. So we hope that he will do that. He was one of the 3 that endorsed Bernie Sanders in 2016. We have our 4 representatives, so Representative Bonamici, Blumenauer, Schrader, and DeFazio, so you can lobby them. And then the balance of the superdelegates are made up of the elected officials of the Democratic Party of Oregon. So those include the chair, which is Casey Hansen, and the first vice chair, which is Pete Lee. And then we have our 3 DNC members, Tanya Shively, Matt Keating, and Travis Nelson. Of those, Pete Lee was a delegate to the 2016 convention. So I've not heard Pete say how he will be voting this year, and perhaps he's waiting until the primary is over before he declares his preference. But hopefully Pete is true to what he did in 2016. Matt Keating was a major organizer for Bernie Sanders in the Eugene area through the convention, but through the primary. But then when Hillary won the convention, he was working for Hillary. I have not heard what he's going to do. I have heard that Travis has said that he will vote for whoever the state takes, whoever takes a majority in the state. And I've also heard secondhand that the other 2 DNC members will do the same, but I've not seen them. Those are only rumors that I've heard. If you would like to contact them, I'm sure you know how to get the email addresses of the federal and statewide elected officials. If you need the email addresses of the Democratic Party members, you can find them at dpo.org. But there are things like Travis at dpo.org, Tanya@dpo.org. It's probably Matt@dpo.org, and it's probably Pete@dpo.org. And I believe Casey's is Casey@dpo.org. But if it bounces, you should probably check on the website to get the actual address. Anything you want to say about the upcoming meeting, Betsy?
Well, actually, I just have a question about the process. I know on the elected officials, binding them to say vote for whoever wins a majority, maybe even a legal issue. But what about the DPO representatives? Is there a way to do that?
Yes, the State Central Committee could pass it, and this is something that's laid out in the party bylaws. Now they could probably come back and say that the DNC rules trump those, and they don't have to be bound. And so we get to the same situation we are with the president, where you really can't litigate it, and so you get to decide when they come up for re-election, should any of them decide to run for re-election in March of 2021. So we will certainly be tracking how all of them vote, and we'll use that if it becomes necessary. We can certainly pass a resolution. There's some question of whether or not they have to honor it.
Well, Kevin, I think it's T-Way says get yourself elected or get a progressive elected in your state Democratic Party, right? That's
Absolutely.
One of the answers.
Yes. For a party that voted 56% for Bernie Sanders, the actual people who are representing you, the Democrats of Oregon, is pretty much not Bernie Sanders supporters. So if Bernie Sanders is elected president, he's going to need a state party that will support his initiatives, and that process begins now. The last day to file to become a precinct committee person is March 10th, and only the elected precinct committee people can vote for the officers of the counties. And for many counties, it's the officers that are the members of the State Central Committee, and those are the ones that are going to vote for your leadership next March. And so it just starts now and keeps rolling through the bureaucratic set of elections that we have for establishing our leadership. But yes, starts now. If you do file to become a precinct committee person and you're a progressive, it would be great if you would go to OregonForBernie.org and let us know. And then what we can do is help you understand what the rules are for the reorganization meetings, because there's been a lot of creative interpretation of how those should run. We want to make sure that all of the counties reorganize according to the bylaws and the parliamentary rules governing elections. And only by doing that do we actually behave like a democracy. So we have some upcoming events. The next slide is key dates to check out. Today is the first day to register to participate in the delegate selection process for the convention representing Oregon. We have literature on this, so if you'd like our 2-page handout, it is also posted at OregonForBernie.org. It talks about, it's a 2-page summary of the whole delegate selection process, which is it's like a 100-page document, and save you some time there. The main thing to remember is that if you are a Democrat, you are eligible to participate in the first set of conventions, which are at the congressional district level. But you do have to register. You just can't show up at the convention on either June 6th or June 7th and vote. You have to be a registered delegate, and you'll be credentialed at the door, and then you'll be able to vote at that. And then people that are elected at the congressional district conventions will then go to the state convention to elect the balance of the delegates. And I'm encouraging everyone to run for every position for which they're eligible. You do state a presidential preference when you register. So in all of these events, the Sanders people will be separate from the Biden people and from anyone else who's collecting delegates. by the time we get to May. And so, yeah, you'll want to declare your presidential preference when you sign up. Again, March 10th is the last day to sign up to run for precinct committee person. There is a alternate process for write-ins, but it is complicated, and as things get more complicated, they're kind of hard to follow. It would be just best that if you are eligible to be a precinct committee person, that you file the form with your county elections office and just get that out of the way. For many people, this is your first time to run for political office, and so it's kind of it's kind of spine-tingling to file that form and start on this great journey of public civic involvement. I believe the Oregon primary is May 19th, so I need to correct that slide. It's the Tuesday in May, and the big thing about that is that that's going to determine how the votes are proportioned for Oregon to the presidential candidates. So as you've seen in the first 4 primaries, the delegates are proportioned both at the congressional district level and at the state level. And so those are all based on how many votes people collect. So the more votes that a candidate gets, the more delegates they will get to the convention. And on the first vote, if you haven't heard, the magic number is 1,991. If someone has 1,991 votes or more going into the convention, then we do not go into a brokered convention situation. We know who the nominee will be. May 21st is the last day to register for the delegate selection convention. So if you had registered for, say, Tom Steyer, and even though we know he dropped out, you didn't change your registration until after the primary. You have 2 days after the primary itself to go in and file again and change your presidential preference. The dates for the conventions are June 6th and June 7th for the congressional district conventions. They're spread over 2 days because they will be shifting the Democratic Party of Oregon staff around so they can cover them. They will be key to the vote counting process, which, if hundreds of people show up, will be quite involved. And then June 20th is the date for the state at-large delegate selection convention. The locations of all of these should be posted on the Democratic Party of Oregon website today, so you can find out where they're going to be. And then, of course, the convention itself is July 13 through I believe it's officially 13 through the 16th. If it's like the convention of 1924, it'll actually go on for 17 days, which will be very interesting. If you do want to get involved and you are a supporter of Bernie Sanders, you can go to the OregonForBernie.org page. There are a number of things you can sign up for there. If you want to be involved in the networking events for being a delegate to the convention for Bernie Sanders, we're arranging those, and we're including anyone who goes and signs up. You can do that at Oregon for Bernie. If you want to help contribute, there's various ways in which you can contribute to the effort. We are collecting money for the 4x8 signs that Brian Heath is painting and distributing across rural Oregon. And all these things help sway voters when we get to the point where they vote in May. On March 8th, we're going to have the second meet and greet for the Sanders Caucus candidates. So this is for anyone who wants to become a delegate to the Democratic National Convention in July. This is the brainchild of Jonathan Tassini. We had one a couple of weeks ago at his house, and we also invited people to join on Zoom. We talked about the whole delegate selection process and how that all works, because it's very, very complicated. The next one will be based in the Marion County Democrats meeting. And if you go to OregonForBernie.org and sign up, we'll distribute more details. We will also televise the meeting on Zoom, and we will give anyone an opportunity who's on the Zoom meeting to speak to the group and give their 1-minute pitch on why they should be a delegate to the Democratic National Convention. So very cool events happening there. What we want to do is for people to be familiar with each other and actually forge ourselves into a team better than we did in 2016. So when we get to the convention, we can work together. The next slide is about the new television show that Carrie Capon and I are doing. It's called Parliamentary Talk. We filmed our first one last month, and we talked about how homeowners associations or neighborhood associations work and how they can, why you might sometimes need parliamentary procedure to counter some of the things that they do. This time we're going to be talking about when elections go south. We'll be taking a situation where the elections themselves were conducted completely above board and accurately, but then there were some questions raised after the election was over that turned into 3 months of acrimony. And so we're going to talk about what the parliamentary authority says on how you handle situations like that. It is, we will be filming that at 12 noon, and it will, in addition to being shown in the Salem area on cable, it will also be live streamed through YouTube. So if you go to parliamentarytalk.org, or I believe it's also at live.uphillmedia.org, you can watch the show. And if you join the live stream broadcast, you can either dial in with your questions and pitch it to Carrie and I, or you can type them into the chat window, just like you do with this show. If you would like to receive notices about this show in particular, you can sign up at advancementofdemocracy.org, and we will make you aware of when they are coming up. They are, because we are so busy with activities, we can't get them out on a daily or on a weekly basis like we did previously. So we will send out notices when they occur. And again, you can see all the live shows at live.uphillmedia.org. As you know, John, or might know, John is trying to acquire a FM station, and this is part of his great empire vision that he has. We need to raise basically $3,500 to finish the deal. You can donate at donate.uphillmedia.org. We would greatly appreciate it so we can get this phase over. Basically, if we can acquire an FM station, it gives us a broader platform in which to pitch shows like Air America did and give a counter message to much of the right-wing misinformation that's being spread around rural Oregon. So if you would like to help with that effort, please go to donate.uphillmedia.org. We also have a GoFundMe site, which I believe is listed out there as well. That's it for our show today. Do we have any final questions from the line, Betsy?
No questions. There's a lot of good comments, though.
Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. Oz, thank you for your comments and participation in the Tacoma Dome discussion. Betsy, thank you so much for your input on the Timber Unity. More to come on that topic, I'm sure. Have a great day, everyone.